It's been 2 years since I realized I'm autistic and have ADHD, and it's been quite a roller coaster. And now looking back at this time, I can clearly see 6 distinct stages that I have gone through. And I thought I would share them with you because looking back, I kind of wish that I would have known sort of like what was coming or what I could expect. And I'm not saying that this will be your exact experience, but speaking to other people from the community, I do see overlaps. So so I just want to share it with you. I am Pia, if you're new here, and I'm what you would call a late diagnosed adult, late diagnosed autistic woman. And I won't go into why we are seeing so many autism diagnoses lately. That's a different topic, but it is something that many of us are realizing. We're realizing our neurodivergence, and we're finally making sense of why certain things have happened to us, or why we have experienced life in a certain way throughout our lives. So anyhow, if you are in your autistic discovery journey already, or you might be suspecting that you're autistic, or maybe you're well into it and you're just curious to see how other people experience it, this video might be for you. You might also want to take into account that I'm a woman and I am 41 years old, so there are a bunch of other components that come into play because of that, just because women's bodies, men's as well, but women's bodies change, quite a bit as we get older, and things like perimenopause, and so it's a real jumble of things. But speaking of neurodivergence, there's a very clear kind of progression that I have seen in these past 2 years. So let's dive right into it. And I have my little notes here. It only has the titles, but the first stage was bliss, total bliss. And I know it might sound like a big word for just realizing something or giving yourself a label, I guess, but it is very real. At least it was for me. The moment I realized that I was autistic, I felt so relieved and so happy, and I was just so overcome with joy to finally have a vocabulary to name my experience. And by this point I already knew that I had something called misophonia, which I can talk about in a different video if you're interested, but I had also already kind of understood that my experience wasn't necessarily the same as other people. And I had already suspected that I might be autistic, but the only person that I went to kind of see if they could assess me was this very, very old, I think he was what was he? He was I went to a friend's consult for her epilepsy, so he was what's the name of it? A neurologist. I blame Burnout and my, in English not being my first language for that lapsus. But anyhow, so I went with him, and in the first 2 minutes of my friend's consult, I also asked him, or I told him that I was also coming with her, because I wanted to see if he could assess me for autism. And immediately he said, "Oh no, you're not autistic." And I was like, "Well, you haven't really, met me. You've not, asked me anything." And he said, "No, because because I know it, and, and just because you can speak to me and look at my eyes, and, you're not autistic," which was kind of discouraging. And I was also in therapy at that moment, and I was kind of told that labels weren't very useful, and that specifically with misophonia, kind of like not to say my misophonia. So I just kind of accepted and said, well, a label isn't that important. So I put it aside. And then years later, I won't tell you the whole story, but essentially something led me to research it again. And I came here to YouTube, and I started hearing all these other creators who were autistic and adults who had also discovered they were autistic late in life. And I just felt, it was such an epiphany. I couldn't stop crying. It was just such a powerful moment in my life, because finally, I had a kind of like a dictionary and, all these words that I could not only use for understanding my own experience, but now it meant that I could also share it with other people. For instance, I don't know, something that has been quite prevalent in my experience has been the loads of sensory issues that I have. Misophonia is very particular with sounds, but I don't know, also, light and things on my skin. And throughout my life, I had always sought for, silent environments or being by myself. I remember that my life was always about kind of figuring out what I was going to say to people to get out of social engagements. And I was always kind of creating, I wear glasses, so this is a reflex. So I was always creating these, strategies for being able to be alone or be in my house, or, finishing work as quickly as possible so I could have some time for myself. And I always thought that I was just, that I didn't like people, or that I was very cranky, and finally understanding that this was something to do with my nervous system, and that my nervous system was getting completely overloaded with so many stimuli. I was finally kind of able to say, okay, this is something that's happening to my nervous system, and it's the way my brain works. So I was able to give myself a little bit more, be more compassionate with myself, and also have the vocabulary to tell my friends. So if I felt way too overwhelmed to go to a party or something, I could just tell my friends that, that I wasn't really feeling up to it. Or if they were my close friends and I shared my diagnosis with them, I could, just tell them that it was going to be too much for me at the moment. Or I could even, go and know that I was going to have to, also plan for recovery time, or find a space in the place where I was going where it would be kind of, quiet, where I could reset while the thing was happening. So it was a really happy moment to find out that I was autistic and finally understand that I wasn't crazy, and that these things, were happening, and that they were not only happening to me, that it was something that other people were experiencing as well. So that was great. The next stage I went through, I am going to call the obsessive rabbit hole, which is also something that I have heard a lot of people experience, which is basically the period of time. And I can say that that's kind of, it hasn't really stopped. It's shifted, but it's a period of time where you're probably going to find yourself completely obsessively researching about what autism is, and, in all these different words and experiences. And it's likely that you will find also new things that, that you didn't even realize that were part of, your experience and related to autism or your neurodivergence. And it's kind of like, the phase where you're researching everything, you're listening to a bunch of other, people talking about their experience. Maybe that's the stage in which you are right now, and that's why you're watching this video. But it's a very useful stage as well. I remember that I would not consume anything other than things related to autism and ADHD. My partner, poor him, he ended up even, finding the voice of a YouTube creator really uncomfortable, because I would fall asleep with my huge headphones just listening to, to their videos. And it was, or it has been very extremely useful to to find out about other people's experiences, to understand nuances and new terminology and research behind certain things. And I mean, I won't get into the specifics with that because, I mean, I would be talking about my particular experience, and it's more about the stages. So, so that stage, meant that I was listening to podcasts all the time, and I was, watching YouTube videos all the time, and I was on social media, kind of like gathering information about, what had to do with being autistic, with being AuDHD, with, what didn't have to do with that at all. And it was also very useful in terms of navigating my relationships as well. So because it can also be easy when you're relating to other people, either your partner or your family or friends, to to kind of bundle up everything that's happening to you under the diagnosis. So it's quite useful to understand kind of like what comes from where, and because you can also get much better at supporting that. And having that knowledge and that vocabulary also allows you, or allowed me at least, to, better advocate for myself and be able to also share my experience and my needs. And, and be better at kind of understanding, what I could do, what I couldn't do, and what I could also tell others that I was capable of or not. So that was the second stage. Then I'll look at my notes. So the third stage was about finding community and support. And this one, I mean, for me, when I found out that I was autistic, I kind of just wanted to shout it to the whole world. I know it's not necessarily the experience of everybody. Some people find it really hard and they might not want to disclose it, which is completely fine. But I just wanted to tell everybody. I even made a video that I posted on my other YouTube channel, which I don't really use. It's more of a channel that I have for when I have to upload videos for, applying for an artist residency or for an art project. But I was, I was so excited that I just posted a video there. I mean, one in Spanish and one in English. And, and I told, not everybody, but my close friends, I'm usually very open about, about being autistic. I don't feel awkward about saying it. But in that stage, I found people that, which is very common, people that would tell me, oh yeah, well, everybody's a bit autistic. But I also found people who, for instance, when I told my partner, at that time we were just starting our relationship, and since I found out we weren't in the same country at that time, and I found it, it was such a pivotal moment in my life that I thought I have to share it with him, because he might, I don't know, at that time I thought he might not want to be with me because I'm autistic, or maybe I didn't even think that, but I just thought that it was something important for him to know. And when I told him, his response was, oh, you didn't know? So that was quite nice to hear. Also, some other friends had already, since years before this, they had been, kind of hinting to me that, that was probably what my experience was. So, one was about kind of like solidifying the relationships that I already had. And in my case, I know that I'm very lucky. I know that it's not the same case for everybody, but in my case, my friends and family were, they didn't even make a fuss out of it, they were just very, very supportive, and, and we've integrated kind of strategies since then. But also, I wanted to find a therapist that had, that knew the language, that, that was informed on all of this, because the therapist that I was seeing, which I have gone back to her actually, and I absolutely love her, but she didn't necessarily know the language, so I felt that I was constantly, sharing something and then having to explain the relation with my neurodivergence. So I made a point of searching for a therapist that, who had the knowledge, and I personally didn't have a great experience in that. The first therapist that I started seeing, one of the first things that I told them was that I had misophonia, and also that I had just realized that I was autistic and had ADHD. But specifically with misophonia, I asked them if they were, if they knew what that was, and they said yes. And I mean, if you don't know, I'll briefly say that misophonia is it's an auditory syndrome, and essentially there are certain triggers, sound triggers, that elicit extreme emotional reactions in the person with misophonia. So we can, if we hear the trigger, it can make us feel extremely angry, or, just like almost go into a panic attack and really needing to, make that sound stop. So I told her, she said that she knew about it. And in our first session, she just had her phone and she was just moving around her house a lot. And she was also slurping, a drink. And it just made me feel so sad and, and enraged, because it triggered my misophonia. But I told her about it, and also all the movement in, with the image was also kind of, it was very overstimulating. But I told them, and and they seemed to understand, so they stopped it. But it happened again. I don't know if in the next session or the third session, and so it was kind of a mixed signal. If it's a person that knows about this neurodivergence, but they're also not taking it into account, it's kind of a red flag. So I stopped seeing them, and then I started seeing another person, and I won't go into the details with that second therapist, but it wasn't a good fit either. So, so I went back to my initial therapist, and I do know that I know that there are many great therapists and coaches out there who are knowledgeable of autism and ADHD. And I also know that there's a big need for them as well. Me personally, I'm an actor, I'm an artist, and I'm also a trained body-mind therapist. But I've paused my practice for a moment because I'm kind of rethinking if I want to focus on helping the community as well. But anyhow, that's a different topic. So that was one of the aspects of finding community and support. And the third aspect was finding other people who are going through this experience as well. And so I found that in English, there are many creators here on YouTube or in other social media platforms that are talking about this, which is great. And some of them actually offer like Zoom meetings for people who are autistic, and you don't have to pay or do anything. You just log on, and and they have several different different schedules or slots or times. I know that, for instance, Autism from the Inside does this. So I went to a few of those, and it was an amazing experience, because it was a Zoom room full of, it wasn't that many of us, but maybe 10 people from around the world. And I didn't know anybody prior to that meeting, but immediately I just felt at home. And I think it had to do just with because of the fact that there was something that we all understood, and that we were all going to kind of take care or beware of the other. And that was a very powerful experience. So then I realized that there was no such space in Spanish. So last year I started a neurodivergent community in Spanish. So I started hosting neurodivergent social meetings, and it was a really beautiful experience as well, because for one, meeting people that who are going through this at various different stages of their process, but who also maybe felt misunderstood or found certain things challenging. So even just sharing experiences with other people was really beautiful. And also I've made some really good friends from those meetings, so that was great. I've been in Mexico for a few days, but I was in London for 2 months because I'm in the process of moving there, and I paused them when I went to London because of the time difference. And I'm also kind of rethinking what to do with them, because I think they need a little bit more structure or intention. So they're paused right now, but during the many months that they happened, they were very helpful. Not only for me, but for the other people who were there. And it was a beautiful experience. So this third stage is about finding community and support. And it is an extremely, extremely beneficial and helpful thing to do. I know that many people don't feel that support or understanding with their close circle, whether it be family or friends. And if that's your case, I'm really sorry. I know that there's a great need for more awareness of the different, experiences. And if that's your case, I can also tell you that there are spaces online for you to find, that type of support and community. And I greatly encourage you to do it. Maybe I'll leave in the description the Autism from the Inside one, and I also leave the information for the one that I host, even though the one I host is in Spanish and it's paused, but in case you know somebody or you yourself speak Spanish. Okay, so the fourth stage was regression, and this is something that I have also heard other people speak of, and it's a real thing when finding out that you're autistic, and I've heard it a lot amongst late diagnosed autistics or neurodivergent individuals. And essentially the feeling is that kind of like the capabilities that you used to have suddenly kind of like start going backwards. So in the previous video that I shared here, I talked about how I lost my voice, and there was also a lot of issues with kind of, I felt that cognitively I was going backwards. Essentially, it feels that all the, let's call them, symptoms is the wrong word, but because it's not an illness, but all the things that, or all the ways in which autism presents in our bodies, all of a sudden it feels like they're just, that there's a magnifying glass over them, that they're just expanded. So in my case, for instance, I felt that all my sensory issues were just, thousands of times worse. Or, the pathological demand avoidance was really, really, really nagging me. Or that, my great need for time and structure was like really out of proportion. And I could go on and on and on. But essentially, it kind of felt that the things that I was kind of able to deal with in the past, or at least that I had found coping mechanisms for, all of a sudden I just couldn't mask them anymore. And it makes sense because, for the whole of your life, you have, before realizing that you're neurodivergent, you have had to navigate the world, despite those challenges. So what happens is that we get really good at masking, or we just find, all these coping mechanisms. And all of a sudden, I found out that there was a reason for all these things, that it didn't mean that I was a bad person. So it's kind of like a process and a moment where you're kind of testing, who you are within all of these challenges. Are some of the things that, that you used to force, maybe you don't have to force them anymore, but where does that leave you now? Does that leave you, unable to do certain things that you used to do? So it's, to be honest, it's quite a challenging stage because it's also quite confusing. It feels as if you're going backwards in life, and it also feels as if everything is just magnified. And it doesn't feel that it pairs up with the initial feeling of complete bliss and happiness. It's all of a sudden it felt heavy, at least for me. At moments I can't deny that I even thought, I wish I hadn't known, which is not the case. I'm really happy that, that I realized this. But yeah, so regression is very real. And and what I could tell you is that if you're going through that stage, we could also reframe it into it being something very beautiful, which is, we are finding who we truly are behind all the masking. And you are you, it's not like you're going to be a different person. Your essence is the same. But it's kind of like about stripping the layers that are not serving you, that are not helping you. So it's kind of like a restructuring moment. And it can be tough, but it's a very important one as well. Then the next stage for me, this one I didn't like. I don't like at all. But the next stage was burnout. And autistic burnout is horrible. I think that, most of us go through it at a certain point or another. And essentially, burnout, we get to a point of burnout when our system is just completely surpassed. So it also makes sense that after a whole life of masking, of finding coping mechanisms, of dealing with a world that is not, very neurodivergent friendly, that, our system is just completely overloaded, and all of a sudden you kind of feel that you can, relax into, who you truly are. So your nervous system also kind of says, oh, I can, I can actually now tell you that I'm feeling horrible, that I'm super tired, that I'm overwhelmed. I don't know if it's ever happened to you. For instance, I remember my mother would never get sick, and she was always working and doing all these things. And when we left home, when we stopped, living with her, or, needing her to survive, she all of a sudden, broke her little toe and got, a cold and, all these things. And essentially it's because, her body was probably just keeping it all together, keeping it all inside, because she knew that she needed to, keep going, to keep us alive and to, give us an education. And all of a sudden when her body and her nervous system realized that she no longer had to kind of like keep it together for somebody else, she just relaxed, and and her body kind of showed the the things that were falling apart. So it's a similar thing with burnout. I think it's it's a moment where everything that has been piled up in your nervous system all of a sudden breaks. And I won't talk too much about burnout here. I will plug in Divergent Conversations. It's a podcast that I really love. They don't know that I'm plugging it, but they have a really great series on burnout. I'll put it in the description as well. But yeah, so it's a stage that I have also heard other people in their late diagnosis discovery experience. And as I said in my last video as well, the main thing that has helped me in transitioning from burnout has been kind of trying to strip my life from to the bare minimum, and especially in terms of responsibilities. So essentially living a more simple life, working as least as I can, not piling up new projects, being very, very mindful about the social engagements that I can deal with, or, the sensory inputs that I can sustain. So this process, I really hope you're not going through burnout, and that you won't go through burnout, because it is really horrible. But it happened to me, so now I can say that it has also been a very useful kind of moment, because it has forced me to change my life. Maybe if I hadn't gone into burnout, I would have just, pushed through life as I had done, up to this point. I've always been used to just having 1,000 projects and making them all happen, and and just extending myself into 1,000 pieces to make things happen. So in burnout, I just wasn't able to, even if I wanted to. And that was a very, very difficult part of burnout as well, that I really wanted to keep doing things and I just couldn't. My body just couldn't, get out of bed sometimes, or shower as often, or feed myself, let alone, work more. So burnout has really helped me to kind of rethink how it is that I want to and can live my life. So, as horrible as it has been, it's, there's some silver lining to it as well. And the next stage is, I've named it weaving and acceptance, or accepting. I feel that I'm still between burnout stage and weaving and acceptance. I don't feel that I'm completely out of burnout. Even today, for instance, I think it's about 2:30 or 3 p.m. when I'm recording this video, and I was really struggling because I was very tired. And it's not that I've done that much today. I mean, I do have kind of like some worries and, things that I have to deal with, but it's not like I went out and ran a marathon. But anyhow, I think that I'm in, between the burnout and weaving accepting stage. I hope to be out of burnout quite soon. But the weaving and acceptance stage, essentially for me, it has kind of felt like all the things that, I don't know, that were clearly defined at the beginning by a word or a description, now are just accepted and part of life. And it's a process. I mean, for instance, with my partner, I think that we're still working out some things that, that we don't necessarily yet, or he might not understand that they're part of my neurodivergence, or maybe I don't even understand them yet. So, I mean, I know that it's going to be a longer process and probably a life process, I don't know. But the weaving and acceptance phase kind of feels like everything that you have learned about yourself and autism kind of like, falls into place in one way or the other. And, and it might come with grief for some people. It might come with, with a lot of joy or, pleasure. I don't know. Each experience is different. But it's a moment where you kind of stop thinking about the label, and you just start living as an autistic person. I mean, I know that you have been living as an autistic person, but you start living as an autistic person with the accommodations that you now know. So now it becomes kind of like a second nature to, to schedule recovery days, or to, for instance, before, maybe even if I didn't want to do social engagements or things, I would push myself to do them. And maybe I would have 1 week where it was, 4 or 5 social engagements plus work, plus, all the other things. And now I know that I just don't do it, and it's not something that I have to remind myself, but I just simply don't do it because my system already knows that it's not going to be able to handle it. So it's a nicer stage, and it's kind of a stage where it feels that everything's falling into place. You kind of feel more comfortable in your own skin. You're much more adept at advocating for yourself, at disclosing it if you want to, at talking to other people about it if you want to. So it kind of feels like it's the first step to the next part of life. And I'm sure that, as time goes by, I will also find new stages, and, and my perspective might change. It might be different. Maybe in a few years, looking back at, at this time as well, I will find a different way to, maybe even to name the stages. But so far, those are the ones that I've experienced. I have also heard other people going through, through a similar kind of experience in terms of the journey and the path. And I can just tell you, if you're in the beginning of your journey and it's being difficult, it does get easier. And it is such a beautiful thing to find out, who you are, where your perspective and the way in which you experience the world comes from. And being autistic comes with many beautiful things, and I would just say, embrace yourself, embrace it. And if you feel that you need support, please reach out. I mean, to me, to other people who are, going through this. There are a lot of people talking about this online as well. You are not alone, and if you don't feel that you have a support group around you, please find one, because I know that it can have very challenging moments. And it's just nice to be here for each other. That's one of the reasons why I'm doing this channel, and why I have kind of, changed the, the theme or the topic, because I have found, for me, it was so important and useful to come to this platform and find other people talking about this. So I really hope that I can do that for you. And I also hope that as I progress in my burnout, I will be able to come here and show up with more energy and a clearer, thought process. But this is who I am right now, and I hope it has been helpful. And I'd love it if you came along on this journey. And if you have experienced any of these stages, leave it in the comments. not only for my channel, because yes, it does help me a lot, for the algorithm to understand that there's engagement, but also because it's very useful for other people. I remember that when I saw some of the videos of other creators talking about this, it was not only about what they were saying in their videos, but also about all the people sharing their experience in the comments. So let's continue creating community and creating more awareness and making this, this stage of our lives be, more joyful, I guess, because this is our life. See you next time.